Hello, welcome. We're at part 7 on staying alive on the Colma Branch. We're watching the hill job come down from Colma, passing the ballpark at Orange Park, and about to cross Orange Avenue on its way down toward Spruce Avenue, which is about where we stopped off in our last episode. So I thought I'd take some time today and share some history of my hometown here and maybe tell the story of how we ended up with that sign up there on the hill. In this shot of South City, about the 1930s, we're looking west from above the San Francisco Bay. That line that you see going across the middle of our picture toward the bottom, that's Southern Pacific's main line into town, the old Bayshore Cutoff, built in 1907. And that will effectively divide the town into two halves, the industrial area growing to our side of the picture and the residential area going the other way. And here is a shot of Fairbanks Morse Switzer performing right behind South City Lumber and Supply, one of our older businesses in town. It's been around since the late 1800s. South City's first major industry was beef packing. And two gentlemen back in the 1850s, Henry Miller and Charles Lux, bought up some farm area over toward the old 12-mile house out in an area called Baden and started up their enterprise. Over the years, George Swift would come out with his interests and set up areas. In fact, it was Swift who actually came up with the name South San Francisco for the community. He had a plan where he would have meat packing out toward the bay and actually set up residential areas in town under the auspices of the South San Francisco Land and Improvement Company. Anyway, time would go on. South City actually had its own railway. It's South San Francisco Power and Railway Company. And here are some tracks, later bought up by the Southern Pacific. But Swift's company would take over Western Meat, become a new entity of its own out in the area. It served for many years. Now, South City wasn't the only area that had meatpacking industries going on. Up in town in San Francisco, out in the Bayview district, was a large area where they had equal facilities for slaughterhouses, butchering, so on. And that was known as South City as well. So it kind of got to the point where we needed to reestablish our entity somehow, and that actually was part of the impetus for putting up the sign up on the hill. Okay, so back to the layout, as I promised. We pick it up from Spruce Avenue, and here's the Colma Branch, or the San Bruno Branch, if you will, by the time we get this far. Anyway, it's heading down into South City. And from here, it actually goes straight ahead down into San Bruno, and we'll meet up with the main line down there. However, I'm out of room. So mine is actually going to head, instead of heading south, it's going to start making a turn here and head north. And it's actually going to tie into, I suppose you could say, part of the main line heading up into San Francisco, which never happened, but again, I'm out of room. So I had that, and it kind of breaks off from in between Baden and Tanforan there and heads right back up to South City. Now, the blue line between South San Francisco and Baden there on the map is called the Linden Branch. And I put that in only because I needed something to run around on. So here we see a Fairbanks Morse engine coming off the Linden Branch, about to tie into the Colma Branch up in an area called Baden. Now, that trackage up there on the Linden Branch where the hopper is coming across Chestnut, that trackage was not there in my lifetime, I must confess. And I had to put it in only because I need operational runaround kind of thing. But it was there at one time, and they did tie in together just beyond the water tower here an area called Baden, right here crossing Colma Creek. So we're going to watch our Fairbanks Morse switchers struggle to get another hill job going on up through the cemeteries and getting up to Colma and Daly City. So as we watch the train leave Baden and pass in front of the old 12-mile house, this area was known as Baden. In fact, this was the area where Miller and Lux started their cattle operations back in the 1850s. But since then, it's reverted back. But the 12-mile house back there dates back to that same period. In fact, I think I've seen 1850, where it was just a stage stop on the old San Jose Road on the way up into town, 12 miles away from the city. Here we are, back over on the Linden Branch on Railroad Avenue. It was never double tracked like you see here, but the line did go down Railroad Avenue as far as Orange Park in my lifetime. Served a number of customers, South City Lumber for one, and then farther up to Guy F. Atkinson, a big general contractor. So it had business up there. Wasn't used much. I didn't see too much, but here we see an Alco pulling his train down behind South City Lumber and right along Railroad Avenue. The Linden Branch here did indeed meet up with the main line in South City, and a little curve, but it swung off down to the south too to meet up with the main line. So again, little compromises I had to make because I'm out of room and out of real estate. And to help illustrate my reality here, I'm heading up toward the end of track. This is the Colma Branch, and I guess you could say it's tying into the main line of the Bayshore Cutoff, heading up towards San Francisco. However, this never happened. But I'm about to run out of track, so anyway, that's my story. I suppose if I wanted to punch a hole out that back wall there and go into the backyard, I could run a line up Bayshore, but I don't see that happening. So here's an overhead shot of San Francisco, or SP's main line, going up toward San Francisco on the Bayshore Cutoff, and it really shows the heavy industry to the east side of the railroad there, out along the bay. Here's South City's third depot, very handsome, but it sat right down to the right at the end of Grand Avenue, across from City Hall over there, across the tracks. But anyway, here's a view of South City and the steel industry really starting to take off. Many steel mill operations were here. American Bridge, U.S. Steel, of course, had to include it. This was a foundry that actually made all the fire hydrants for San Francisco. Pacific Sheet Metal. Yeah, great picture of the Western Pipe. Pretty impressive. Bethlehem Steel Works. And we had we had shipbuilding in South City. We actually launched 40 some ships just off of Oyster Point there. Great overhead view of that. And in that same area, we see the Lark rounding the bend at Sierra Point. South City's fourth railroad station, right down there among the heavy industry and smokestacks of the area. And a 1950s commute train coming down. And South City's yard, a pretty busy place with all that industry out there. Another look at U.S. Steel and Oyster Point. But as with all other things, that industry faded away as well. Gone, and pretty well forgotten by now. So, with the demise of the heavy industry, it left this whole area to become more of a very light industrial park, still served by the SP, but not much action like the old days. Okay, so to the story of Sign Hill. Well, back in 1923, a city engineer went up there and laid out all that lettering to try and promote South City, gain our rightful identity, and advertise for new industry. Anyway, they used a cheap mixture of lime and white cement, and it wasn't really permanent. In fact, they hired high school kids at 40 cents an hour to go up there and maintain it all the time. But finally, in 1929, the Chamber of Commerce put forth a proposal for a parcel tax of 7 cents to raise $5,000 to get that permanently done in concrete. Well, it didn't pass the first time, but the second time it passed by a 3-to-1 margin, and on a bid of $4,845, the Cement Gun Company of South San Francisco went up there and permanently affixed the letters. Our next bit of history is our city hall. The land was acquired here from the South San Francisco Land and Improvement Company in 1910 for about $10,000, I think, but $125,000 went into its construction, and here we see its dedication in 1920. It was fashioned after the Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and you can see a marked similarity. Beautiful building, but I think I like our city hall a little bit better. And grand structure, really neat. So I decided I'd have to model it. So here's my version. Its neighbor to the left is a Carnegie Library that was donated by Andrew Carnegie, $10,000 for its construction in 1916. A picture of it as well. Beautiful building, and again I had to include that on the layout, so my version of it. So with that, we'll leave you with a few more shots of action on the Colma Branch, coming up out of South City, on its way up to Colma. And I'll just leave it at that, and hope you've enjoyed it. So South City's continued to grow and flourish. I think the population is about 66,000 now, if not more. But we've gone from the steel mills to the center of biotech And here we are today, just south of San Francisco, but we are South San Francisco in our own right. Thanks for looking in.